My wife, Sophia, decided to have a child for her first love, who was suffering from uremia. They were constantly on guard, fearing that I would show up and stop them. On the day of the birth, they even hired a row of bodyguards at a high price. But I tactfully didn't appear. They thought I had learned my lesson and, holding the baby, they sighed contentedly, good for him that he didn't show up. Otherwise, it would have been awkward for everyone. Even my wife said, "Humph, if he behaves well, maybe I'll let the child call him Dad." But they didn't know that I had long stopped caring about these things. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. I touched the emblem of the International Extreme Rescue Team and felt a sense of relief. I was about to go abroad to join the international team. This time, I was going to leave them completely behind. When Sophia gave birth, her parents had her stay at a high-end center to be taken care of until she finished her confinement month before returning home. During this month, I completed the pre-departure training and had all the formalities in order. I was lying in bed, preparing to get a good night's sleep, when a commotion came from the doorway. This child really has the best genes. The little upturned nose is like Sophia's, and the eyes have David's look. What a perfect combination, they said. Well done, Sophia. I'm truly happy that you were able to have this child for David. Her parents, Sophia, and her first love, David, entered the door like a happy family, holding the baby. They quickly put down their luggage and gathered on the sofa, taking turns holding the child. Still, the child should be born to Sophia and David, they're both good-looking, someone commented. Yeah, if it were really James's child, it would be a disaster, dark, ugly, and stubborn, her father finished, just as I walked out of the bedroom. They were all startled, looking at me as if I were a ghost. How come you're home? Do you walk without making any sound? You scared me to death, they stammered. I scanned them one by one, their faces twisted and unfamiliar. They used to be proud to have me as a son-in-law. My relationship with Sophia began with a somewhat traditional yet full of expectation blind date. Although it was arranged, we hit it off, talking about everything from hobbies to life dreams, finding common ground in every topic. The first impression was incredibly satisfying, as if we were the ones we had been waiting for in our lives. At that time, Sophia's parents showed great respect and support for my profession. They said they were extremely proud of my job. Whenever she mentioned me to friends and relatives, her face would light up with pride. In Sophia's eyes, I was not only a responsible man but also the most charming presence in her heart, giving her a sense of security she had never felt before. I used to believe it, but now, sitting on the sofa and looking at me as if I were the most superfluous one, I realized how things had changed. Well, since you're here, you probably already know the situation. You didn't make a fuss before, and Dad knows you must agree. Her father coughed lightly, giving a meaningful look to everyone present, as if making a conclusion as the head of the family. I let out a cold laugh and ignored them. Sophia immediately got angry at my attitude. James, what are you laughing at? Do you have a problem? How selfish can you be? David has uremia. He's done so much for us in the past. It's only right that I give him an heir. David conveniently coughed, pulling Sophia closer and saying, Sophia, don't get angry for my sake. You haven't fully recovered yet. His performance stirred everyone's sympathy, but I couldn't see any signs of a critically ill person on his face. After all, who with a serious illness would have the leisure to act? Sophia, with the gentle demeanor of a new mother, leaned weakly against David's shoulder and glared at me. Look how sensible David is. Can't you learn from him? Her mother tried to smooth things over. Jimmy, you're always busy with work, running around with no set schedule. We only have Sophia, and we need a man in the house. David has taken care of her since they were kids. We treat him like our own son. Now that he's sick, how could we not help? What a son indeed, and friends since childhood. If he were truly a son, would you let your own daughter have a child for him? In the end, I became the obstacle to their perfect family circle. They played good cop and bad cop, and eventually David weakly pleaded, Mr. James, it's normal not to accept it. It's all my fault for falling ill suddenly. Cough cough, it's my fault. Now everyone was getting impatient, thinking I was being aggressive. Sophia waved her hand irritably. James, we've said everything we can. If you won't listen, there's nothing I can do. Next week, we're going to have a homecoming party for the baby, and all our relatives and friends will be there. If you know what's good for you, you'll tell them the child is yours. If you insist on making a scene, the embarrassment will be on you. I calculated the dates in my head, and next week just happened to be the day I was leaving the country to join the National Extreme Rescue Team. But if I could leave them with some unforgettable memories before I go, that would be interesting. I shrugged, my face expressionless and my heart unmoved, and replied calmly, sure, no problem. Since I've decided to leave, I might as well do it cleanly. I began to quietly pack my things, each item carrying memories of Sophia and me. They lay silently in the cabinet, as if narrating our past sweetness and happiness. No, perhaps it was always just my one-sided perception of happiness. My gaze swept over the everyday items that belonged to us, as well as the carefully preserved gifts and movie tickets that recorded every detail of our dates. Those moments that once warmed my heart now felt like sharp blades, cutting into my soul. I vividly remembered the night 3 months ago when I ended a weeks-long international rescue mission with high expectations. My heart was filled with longing for home and for Sophia. But when I pushed open the door, there was another man in my bedroom. I knew him. He was Sophia's first love, David. My heart felt like it was being torn apart, making it hard to breathe. And Sophia's big belly was like a heavy hammer, smashing into my heart. Of course, I knew the child wasn't mine. "Mr. James, you're back. Rest up," David said, acting like the real master of the house, wearing my pajamas and inviting me to make myself at home. Enraged and humiliated, my rationality was overwhelmed by anger, and I lunged at David. But Sophia, like an angry lioness, swung a broom and hit my back fiercely, protecting David. "James, what are you doing? If you dare hit him, you'll regret it. David is sick, and I have to give him an heir. If you have a problem, talk about it instead of taking it out on David." My heart shattered completely, and all my love and trust turned to dust in an instant. The appearance of Sophia's parents brought the farce to a climax. Her father grabbed me, his face full of anger. "What are you doing? Can't you see Sophia is pregnant? Coming home and causing a scene, don't you feel ashamed?" "We certainly do." Her mother started to cry. "What a disaster. Why can't you be more sensible? Being so selfish only makes things harder for Sophia." They accused me of being selfish and unsensible without a second thought, as if I were the one at fault. Standing there, I felt utterly alone and heartbroken. Since that was the case, I had no reason to stay. I signed up for the international rescue team and began my training. I emerged from my memories, and Sophia knocked on the door. "I see you've come to your senses. The baby can't be separated from its parents now. I'm used to this bedroom, so you should let David move in here." I stared into her eyes, trying to see a glimpse of the older. Her father, thinking I would disagree, shouted loudly from the living room, "The house is in Sophia's name. She has the right to decide who lives here." Listening to their seemingly reasonable excuses, I felt a sense of emptiness inside. I didn't bother arguing or wanting to have any more connections with her. I was just too tired. Silently, I picked up my suitcase and walked towards the utility room. The utility room was dark and damp, with a musty smell in the air. I looked around. It was filled with various odds and ends and discarded items. I found a corner and put down my suitcase. Looking at this small space, I suddenly realized that this might be my true destination, free from memories and pain, with only myself and the quiet darkness. I sat on the suitcase and lit a cigarette. In the smoke, I seemed to see our once happy times. In the living room, they were having a joyful meal together, with laughter echoing around the table. "I'm going to get a safety lock for the child. What should we engrave on it? How about Sophia and David? After all, it's their child." "Mom, Dad, I think we should just put David and let the child take David's last name." I took a deep breath, trying to inhale all the pain and sadness into my heart, and then exhaled fiercely. The confidentiality regulations of the International Rescue Team were like an invisible shackle, completely isolating me from my past life. On the eve of setting off for a foreign land, I had to complete an important task, canceling my domestic identity. This meant that I would bid farewell to everything I once knew, including my name, identity, and the days I spent with Sophia. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the gaps in the curtains, casting a cool touch on my face. I woke up early, ready to leave. I took one last look at the home that once echoed with laughter and warmth, and then turned resolutely and walked away. At the office, I went through the procedures step by step to cancel my identity. The staff's expressions were indifferent and stern, as if they were performing a routine task. Watching my ID card being shredded in my hand, I felt an indescribable sense of excitement. It wasn't just the disappearance of a piece of paper, it was the end of my past life. After canceling my identity, I wandered aimlessly on the streets, deciding to visit the market to sell the things I no longer needed. It was a way to say goodbye to the past. The market was bustling with noise and activity, but I felt like I was in another world, out of place among it all. Just as I was about to hand over an old piece of clothing to a vendor, a familiar figure caught my eye. Sophia and David were intimately selecting a baby stroller, their faces beaming with happiness. Behind them were Sophia's parents, the whole family looking blissfully content, as if I had never existed. "We need to buy a lot of things with a baby on the way: strollers, toys, cribs. These are all necessities. David is so thoughtful, taking us out for a big shopping spree. We'll renovate the house in a while. I don't like the current style, Sophia said. I vividly remembered that this house was bought with the money I saved before getting married, every inch representing my hard work and sweat. When we got married, I lovingly offered it as a gift and changed the deed to Sophia's name. Now, it had become her and David's cozy nest, while I was an outsider. They spotted me, their faces flickering with surprise for a moment before quickly returning to calm. Sophia walked over, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, isn't this the busy man? You disappear early in the morning and are never around when you're not working." "Sophia is recovering now," her mother added, casting a disapproving glance my way. David also approached, looking at me with a provocative stare, as if to say, "Look, this is everything you once had, and now it's all mine." A smug smile played on his lips, fueling my anger and resentment. He didn't look like someone suffering from a terminal illness at all. I didn't want to argue with them, fearing they might soon demand, "Let him donate a kidney to David." Sophia's next words left me speechless. "James, you were gone on that rescue mission for so long. You must have made a lot of money." "I gained weight during my pregnancy, and my clothes are too small. Give me some money to buy new ones." I couldn't hold back my retort. "Who did you have the baby for? Ask him for the money. Can't David afford to buy you clothes?" David's eyes welled up with tears, and he lowered his head, pretending to be in pain, a truly Oscar-worthy performance. Her parents couldn't stand it anymore and rushed to David's defense. "James, what are you doing? David is sick, all his money went to medical bills. How can you be so selfish? We're ashamed to have you as a son-in-law. Disgraceful, just disgraceful." Looking at their greedy and selfish faces, I felt a strong wave of disgust and contempt. I coldly refused their demands and walked away without another word. I knew I couldn't get entangled with them any longer, otherwise, I would only bring myself more pain and humiliation. I didn't want to see them in the remaining days, so I rented a nearby weekly hotel room, just to catch up on sleep. At this moment, I was no longer the fool blinded by love. If Sophia liked David so much and wanted to have his child, then let them be happy together. I stayed in the hotel until the family banquet began, undisturbed by anyone. They were all immersed in the joy of the baby's arrival and had no time to bother me, and I was happy to be left alone. It seemed as if they had completely forgotten about my existence. The banquet was held at a luxurious local hotel, with a grand scale and opulent decorations that surpassed my own simple yet heartfelt wedding. It felt more like a meticulously planned engagement party than a celebration of the baby's arrival. The two of them, dressed in custom-made gowns and suits, stood in the dreamlike banquet hall, looking like a prince and princess from a fairy tale, so perfectly matched that it was almost blinding. Finally, I mustered the courage to head to the banquet hall. The moment I pushed open the door, the hall was filled with dazzling lights and a roar of voices, but I felt like an unwelcome guest, out of place. Sophia saw me and her face immediately took on a reproachful expression. She quickly walked over, ignoring the stares of the guests, and scolded me, "Why are you dressed like this? So shabby, not even wearing a suit. Are you trying to embarrass us? All our relatives are here, and this is how you choose to defy me? Just wait until I get my hands on you." Her tone was filled with disdain and dissatisfaction, as if my very presence was the greatest desecration of the grand feast. The relatives began to notice my arrival, their eyes lingering on me before shifting to the child who bore no resemblance to me, and the whispers grew louder. They all knew about David and Sophia's childhood friendship and their first love. This scene naturally raised many questions. The complex glances, mixed with sympathy, confusion, and even contempt, made me feel like I had thorns in my back. Sophia began her speech on stage. "Today, we've gathered everyone to celebrate the arrival of my baby into our family. I never expected to become a mother so suddenly, but it feels wonderful." I took a deep breath, trying hard to stay calm. On stage, Sophia and David exchanged glances and acted intimately, as if no one else was around, which finally pushed me to my breaking point. I strode straight to the stage and grabbed the microphone. In that moment, the entire banquet hall fell silent, and all eyes were on me. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to clarify something. This child is not mine. I believe everyone can see that. David claimed he had uremia and didn't have long to live, so they decided to leave an heir. Whether he really has uremia, I think everyone can tell. But I won't be the fool, and I won't wear the green hat. From now on, I have no connection with Sophia or the entire Sophia family." As soon as I finished speaking, the banquet hall erupted in an uproar, with shocked gasps and murmurs spreading like wildfire. Sophia and David's faces turned pale instantly. They hadn't expected me to expose the lie so directly. Her parents were furious and rushed forward, as if they wanted to tear me apart. "What are you doing? Why do you have to embarrass us like this? I thought you were quiet these past few days, but it turns out you were just plotting something evil. Sophia is so unlucky to be married to a selfish jerk like you." David's eyes were filled with anger and frustration, while Sophia screamed, trying to grab the microphone from my hand to stop me from continuing. But I had already made up my mind to reveal the truth, no matter the consequences. Her father, his neck bulging with rage, was about to call for someone to stop me and even raised his cane, intending to strike me. "I'll teach you a lesson, you good for nothing." Just then, the banquet hall doors burst open, and members of the international rescue team rushed in. "Let's see who dares to lay a hand on Captain James." My team members swarmed into the hall, surrounding everyone present. Olivia stepped forward, saluted me, and asked, "Captain, are you all right?" I shook my head and questioned, "I'm fine, but what are you guys doing here?" The once aggressive in-laws froze at the sight of the dozens of well-dressed, burly men. Her mother frowned and asked, "James, what on earth have you been doing? Did you bring all these people here to beat up your wife's family?" She was truly a force to be reckoned with, fearless even in the face of danger. But despite her tough words, her increasingly pale face betrayed her fear. Sophia, holding the baby, clung tightly to David, her voice trembling. "James, what do you think you're doing?" I looked at them and let out a cold laugh, brushing the dust off my shoulders. "What do I want? I just want to find my own life. Since you don't want me around anymore, there's no need for me to force myself to stay. Here is the divorce agreement. Sign it." I took out the pre-drafted divorce papers and handed them to my wife, Sophia. She glanced back at David, picked up the pen hesitantly, but to my surprise, David snatched it away and threw it on the ground. "No way, we can't do this." David's job was a sinecure given by a company owner I had saved. He had no real skills and relied entirely on me to have a job that kept him afloat. Not just him, but Sophia and her parents combined were all living off my salary. Hosting such a grand party had probably drained their meager savings. If I divorced Sophia, they would likely be left destitute for the rest of their lives. David, of course, was well aware of this. "No, Mr. James, let me explain. Sophia and I aren't like that. She was just helping me out," David tried to argue. His words made me laugh out loud. "Help? You call having a child help? David, this is already an act of infidelity, and you are, in fact, Sophia's lover." After I spoke, I stared intently at Sophia and her parents. I told them, either sign the divorce agreement now, or be prepared for me to hire the best divorce lawyer and sue you. The house and the car were bought in full by me. With proven infidelity, you, the guilty party, won't get a single cent. On top of that, you'll have to compensate me for emotional distress. But now, I'm being generous and don't want to sue you. Considering our years of marriage, I'm giving you a choice." I signaled one of my team members to pick up the pen from the floor and handed it to Sophia once again. "The choice is yours, leave with nothing, or be sued by me and leave with nothing. You decide." With that, I turned around and walked away without looking back. Her parents and David's faces turned pale instantly. The relatives who had just been mocking me now shifted their target to Sophia's family. I glanced at their family portrait of 5 and felt a sense of relief. From now on, I would no longer dwell on romantic attachments and would dedicate my life to the noble cause of international aid. I turned and walked out of the hall with my rescue team members. At that moment, Olivia appeared in front of me again, her face sly as she handed me a phone. "Hee, Captain James, after you left, I had someone secretly install a small camera, which is now connected to this phone. Do you want to take a look?" I took the phone, immediately turned off the live stream, and handed it back to Olivia. I said, "I have no more connection with that family. Let them do whatever they want. I have my own matters to attend to. Do you understand?" Olivia, seeing the determination on my face, suddenly broke into a delighted smile. "Welcome back to the team, Captain James." Soon, I left the country with my team and joined the International Extreme Rescue Team. Our missions were even more arduous than I had imagined. For some reason, there had been a recent surge in people attempting extreme sports challenges. Some were free climbing K2, others were swimming across the Bering Strait, and there were even those live streaming their survival attempts in the Sahara Desert during the dry season. I couldn't understand why so many people would risk their own and others' lives for the sake of thrill and internet fame. After several months, my team and I were all exhausted. We had been involved in high-altitude rescues, deep-sea rescues, desert rescues, and countless other dangerous situations. Some of our team members had even lost their lives in the process. On our last mission, I was drifting in the sky with a parachute, watching a person whose parachute had failed to fully open. I flew straight towards him, with only 3,000 meters left to the ground. I wanted to grab his hand and secure him to my chest, but he was flailing his limbs wildly like a drowning person. I couldn't stop him, and we were fast approaching the minimum altitude for parachute deployment. Since the area below was a dense forest, it would be extremely difficult to locate us if we landed there, so we needed to deploy the parachute as soon as possible. Air turbulence made me feel dizzy, and the person in my arms kept struggling, delaying the deployment of my parachute. Olivia's voice kept shouting in my earpiece, "Deploy the parachute! Hurry up! Captain, deploy the parachute!" I reached for the parachute pack, but he kept interrupting me. I shouted loudly, "Stop moving! Let me open the parachute! Stop moving!" But my voice was lost in the rapid descent. The ground was getting closer and closer, and so was my death. I could already see the green canopy of the trees, and my life began to flash before my eyes. For the last time, I reached for the parachute pack and said my final words into the earpiece, "No matter what happens to me, bring me home." This time, I made it. The deployed parachute was lifted by the air currents, and both the person in my arms and I were thrown out. The strong convection caused us to pass out. When I woke up again, I was lying in a hospital bed. Olivia was sitting beside me, her face filled with relief as she saw my eyes open. Captain, you're awake." I tried to move my hand but realized I couldn't feel anything no matter how hard I tried. Olivia seemed to sense my predicament and said, "It's okay, Captain. You passed out during the landing and hit a rock, fracturing your right arm. But the doctors said it's not serious. I heard what you said, and now you're in the hospital in your hometown. You'll be able to leave in a few days after some rest." As Olivia spoke, she glanced to the right. Following her gaze, I saw someone I didn't want to see: my wife, Sophia. She was lying on a bed nearby, the dark circles under her eyes indicating that she had probably stayed up all night. Olivia scratched her head and said, "When you were brought to the hospital, we didn't tell anyone. I don't know how she found out, but she rushed here. We couldn't stop her. She pleaded with me for a long time, and I felt sorry for her, so I let her in. She didn't do much, she just cried beside you, and when she was tired, she went back to cook for you and slept on the hospital bed." I didn't blame Olivia but gestured for her to wake Sophia. Olivia patted Sophia, who jolted awake immediately. "Is James awake? How is he?" Seeing my open eyes, Sophia's tears flowed instantly. James, you're finally awake." Looking at her excited face, I felt no emotional stir. If it were her old self, I would have been moved to tears, but now I just wanted to laugh. However, I didn't show it on my face. Sophia continued to cry and pour out her longing to me. "James, I missed you so much. I dreamt of you every day and couldn't sleep for thinking of you." I rarely heard such sentimental words from her, even when we were dating. I couldn't help but open my mouth, my voice hoarse. "Sophia, how many times have you said these words to David?" Hearing this, Sophia froze in place and cried uncontrollably. Olivia also sensed my annoyance with Sophia and didn't offer her a tissue. She frowned at her and said, "Our captain needs to rest. If you're going to cry, do it outside. Don't disturb our captain here." Sophia looked at me in disbelief. The old me would never have treated her like this. I would have comforted her no matter what, even if we had just had an argument. I turned my head away, not wanting to look at her, and asked Olivia to get me a glass of water. I didn't know how long I had been unconscious, but my throat was so dry it felt like it was smoking. Sophia had no intention of leaving and just sat on the bed, crying nonstop. Olivia and I ignored her and chatted with each other. It was then that I learned I had been unconscious for nearly a week. The high-altitude turbulence and convection had caused both the person I rescued and me to pass out. The man was the son of a wealthy tycoon, and I had instinctively protected him during the landing. He wasn't hurt at all, just a bit concussed. He and his father were extremely grateful and took me to the best hospital for treatment. Once I was out of danger, I was transferred to my hometown hospital, with all medical expenses covered by the wealthy father and son. Additionally, the tycoon gave me a large sum of money as a token of gratitude. Since I was unconscious, the team collected it on my behalf. There was also a team bonus and a month's vacation. Olivia also told me that the wealthy son felt very sorry for causing my injury and gave me another sum of money privately. The moment I woke up from my coma, I suddenly became a multimillionaire. The feeling was still somewhat surreal, but I didn't show any joy on my face. Instead, I just gave a faint smile. I coldly looked at Sophia beside me and saw the gleam in her eyes, especially when Olivia mentioned my newfound wealth. Her eyes lit up. After years of marriage with Sophia, I knew all her micro-expressions well. This was the look she had whenever she wanted something, her eyes sparkling. She sat there, trying to interject but being ignored by both Olivia and me. After a while, feeling out of place, she got up and left. I watched her go, my eyes narrowing slightly. I had a feeling she still had some plans for my money. Back at home, with the care of my team members, my health improved steadily. The youthful vigor and passion that I once had seemed to return to my body. I actively cooperated with the treatment, and my arm was eventually free of the cast, functioning normally again. Not wanting to waste my month-long vacation, I packed my bag and headed to the places I had longed for so many times: plateaus, lakesides, snowy mountains, and highways. With my somewhat unsteady steps, I continued to explore the world that had always captivated me. I cast aside all worldly concerns and focused only on the path ahead. As for David and Sophia, I had already changed my phone number, so they couldn't reach me. I only heard from Olivia that on the day I left, they were frantic with worry when they couldn't find me. Sophia was reportedly beaten by David, her face covered in scars, and even disfigured. She hadn't been out for a long time. But I didn't care anymore. I had given her countless chances, but each time she chose David. Her current situation was her own doing. My choice was to continue on my path. 3 months later, I completed my planned trip and brought back a backpack full of gifts for my team members and friends. When I got off the bus and arrived at my doorstep, I saw a woman kneeling there. From her hair and figure, I immediately recognized her as Sophia. She seemed to hear my footsteps and turned to look at me. Her face startled me. It was no longer delicate and beautiful but scarred from burns. Even her once sparkling eyes were hidden behind the ugliness, revealing only a small trace of their former luster. Sophia's voice was hoarse as she said to me, "James, you're back." "It's me, Sophia." Looking at the disfigured person before me, I was still somewhat incredulous, even though I had heard about it. I couldn't believe David could be so ruthless, even towards the woman who had given birth to his child. Sophia didn't stand up but continued to kneel, tears streaming down her scarred face. She reached out and grabbed the leg of my pants, pleading with me, "James, please, can we get back together? I really know I was wrong. David is a scumbag. Only you truly care about me. I was blinded by David before, but I know I was wrong. James, please, can we remarry? I promise I'll be good to you." Listening to Sophia's hoarse voice, I smiled. With tears in my eyes, I said, "You know you were wrong? When I was injured and lying in the hospital, unable to move, you didn't come to see me. When I was alone at home, staring at an empty house, you didn't come to see me. When I was ridiculed by your relatives, you didn't come to see me. Now that David has disfigured you and you're kneeling here, you say you know you were wrong." Sophia's tears flowed incessantly, but she remained silent. I continued, "Don't think I don't know what's going on in your family. After I left, you lost your income. David gambled every day, and when he lost, he took out his frustrations on you, venting all his anger on you. The David you believed in has no ability to support you, can't pay off debts, and has run off with all your money. Now you're penniless, burdened with debts, and you come to me for remarriage. Sophia is pitiable now, but whose fault is it? In countless choices, she always firmly chose David. All of this is the result of her own decisions. I tried desperately to win back her love, but she still chose David. I can only say that while heaven-made disasters can be forgiven, self-inflicted ones cannot be lived with. I didn't continue to listen to Sophia's complaints but had someone take her away. I turned and walked into my house. I didn't want to see her anymore. For a long time afterward, I heard nothing more about David and Sophia. It was as if they had vanished from the world. Their family, as expected, went bankrupt. They owed a large sum of money, and the debt was so overwhelming that it would take her 10 lifetimes to pay it off. David, after borrowing the money, took all of Sophia's savings and fled, leaving her with only the child. Sophia also disappeared without a trace, and there was no more news of her. I returned to work once again. Fortunately, I didn't encounter any particularly difficult situations and things went smoothly until that day when my team was awarded the Earth Peace Guardian Medal by the United Nations. I hosted a grand celebration. After several rounds of drinks and courses, I left the noisy celebration and stepped into the night. It was raining outside, and the rain was as cold as ever, but wearing a coat was much warmer than being drenched like a drowned rat. I was about to light a cigarette when a familiar figure suddenly flashed before my eyes. I immediately recognized her. It was Sophia. She was covered in dirt, wearing a hood, and following someone furtively. I called my bodyguards and followed her. Sophia cornered the person in a narrow alley, and a voice came out, "Sophia, how could it be you? How did you end up here? Help!" The cries for help were quickly drowned out by the increasing rain, leaving only the blood-stained dagger in Sophia's hand. I recognized the voice. It was David. Sophia turned and saw me, trying to run over and hug me, but my bodyguard stopped her. The rain washed over her body as she shouted excitedly, "It's me, James. It's me, Sophia." Seeing that I ignored her, she raised her hand and looked at me. Look, I'm still wearing the engagement ring you gave me. Let's get back together, please. Sophia's state was somewhat frantic. Even with the bodyguards holding her back, she tried desperately to embrace me. But I didn't care and simply asked her, "Why are you wearing the ring?" Sophia replied, "Because I want your love. I want to remarry you." Sophia, we've reached the end. Rings and vows can't mend the broken relationship between us. Her eyes glistened with tears, and her lips trembled slightly, but she didn't say anything more to try to hold me back. Some wounds are irreparable, like a shattered mirror. Even if the pieces are put back together, it can never be the same as before. I took a deep breath, turned resolutely, and said in a deep, firm voice, "From now on, let's go our separate ways." Sophia fell silent. After speaking, I left the alley without any hesitation, accompanied by my bodyguards. The next morning, I saw the local news. A girlfriend, burdened with a huge debt after her boyfriend ran off with her money, had been searching for him. She finally spotted him on a street, walking arm in arm with a strange girl. She followed him secretly and killed him in an alley at night. The news concluded that the girlfriend killed herself after murdering her boyfriend. I immediately turned off the news. Sophia and David were forever left in that rainy night. I looked out the window at the rising sun, knowing that my good life was just beginning.